and in smoke detectors, and in electrical plants like the one just an hour and a half away from here in Columbia, Alabama. Hi, my name is David Buchner, and I'm here to tell you about nuclear energy. My panelist is James Totten, a doctoral student at the University of Florida studying thermal hydraulics and advanced reactor designs. But first, to convince you that we need nuclear energy, I need to convince you that we shouldn't be using fossil fuels and renewable energy to produce our electricity. Fossil fuels, the burning of fossil fuels creates a lot of pollution, and in 2019, it's estimated that about 1.2 million people died in China last year due to air pollution. The Global Alliance on Health and Pollution also estimates that about 110,000 people in the United States also died from air pollution. Coal releases more greenhouse gases than any other major electricity source, yet produces 40% of the world's electricity share. We are using the dirtiest form of energy the most. The mining of coal also has serious environmental impacts. In mountaintop removal mining, entire mountains are quite literally leveled in the pursuit of coal. And in the mining process, ponds are created that are full of toxic materials and elements such as arsenic and lead, and are full of radioactive contaminants. These ponds are labeled high risk by the Environmental Protection Agency because of the materials they contain. In 2008, in Kingston, Tennessee, there was an ash spill at a holding pond at the Kingston coal plant. Now, when this spilled, it released 10 times more ash than the Deepwater Horizon spill released oil. There was a cleanup effort to clean up all of this ash, and in the 10 following years, at least 36 of the workers that cleaned it up have died from cancers that were almost certainly caused by the materials they had to clean up. In 2018, there was a 10-year reunion of the accident, and it was noticed that an unusually high number of the workers who returned were holding inhalers due to medical conditions they had. The drilling for oil and fracking also pollutes local water supplies. Each fracking well uses about 4 million gallons of water in its lifetime. The US alone contains about 300,000 of these wells. Behind me, you see a pretty map of the United States at night. You're like, oh, I can see where Atlanta is, or I can see New York. But if you look at the top left of North Dakota, you see a bright patch, and you're like, whoa, I didn't know there was a big city there. There's not. That is actually a giant oil field, and the light you see is from the flare gas they are burning, which is excess methane that they are required to burn to keep it from getting into the atmosphere. But by burning it, they also release large amounts of CO2, and you can see the burning from space. Now, we move on to why renewables cannot make up our electricity. Capacity factor basically tells you how reliable an energy is. The higher the capacity, the more time it's able to operate and produce power. Nuclear energy has a capacity factor of about 94%. But solar energy only has a capacity of about 25%. That means only a quarter of the time it's able to produce electricity. The main problem with renewable energies is that the sun doesn't always shine, the wind doesn't always blow, and if they're creating excess energy in the middle of the day, we cannot store this energy. It just gets wasted and not used. In Texas right now, they're having massive blackouts because Texas relies on 20% of their electricity from wind. In the cold conditions, the ice has stopped up the wind turbines, and the wind turbines are not creating electricity. And Texas doesn't have enough fossil fuel capacity to take over for this, and so they're not able to produce enough electricity for all their citizens. And so people are under massive blackouts. A theorized solution to this is something called a supergrid. A supergrid would connect vast tracts of land with each other, say France to Ukraine. And it's theorized that by doing this, if France wasn't producing a whole lot of renewable energy one day, but Ukraine was, Ukraine would be able to send their electricity through transmission lines to France. But this would cost sums of money, probably well into the trillions of dollars, and it would not be safe. Say a terrorist wanted to make cities in France go dark, and if France was receiving most of their electricity from Ukraine, all they would have to do is cut or blow up 1 or 2 transmission lines across a thousands of miles area, and they could make entire cities go dark. Now, we move on to nuclear energy. The main problem with nuclear energy that some people see is that it's expensive. But nuclear power doesn't have to be expensive. In 2019, renewable sources received at least 30 times the subsidies that nuclear energy did. If some of these subsidies were applied to nuclear energy, the cost of nuclear could drop drastically and even be competitive with some fossil fuels. Another thing driving up the cost of nuclear energy is excessive and irrelevant regulations that extend the construction time. In 2008, Obama appointed Gregory Jaczko to be chairman of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. Now, you would think the person in charge of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, which regulates all nuclear in the United States, would be a pro-nuclear activist. But no, Gregory Jaczko actually hates nuclear energy. He was appointed specifically because of his hate for nuclear energy, to appease a senator in Nevada. During his tenure as chairman, he got the Yucca Mountain Waste Depository shut down. Yucca Mountain was to be a place where the United States could put all of its spent nuclear fuel for the next centuries or even thousands of years and be safe and release no radiation into the outside environment. But Gregory Jaczko got this shut down. Now, we don't necessarily even need Yucca Mountain because we actually have these reactor designs that can reprocess and reuse spent nuclear fuel. But due to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, which prevents the reprocessing of spent nuclear fuel, these designs actually cannot be built. Now, the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty was supposed to keep some countries from getting nuclear weapons and testing them. Now, in many cases, the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty has failed us, and many of these countries have actually received nuclear weapons. And the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, talking about reprocessing spent nuclear fuel in a reactor used for electricity, just isn't reasonable because these reactor designs are amazingly efficient. Nuclear energy actually emits 1/4 of the CO2 emissions of one of the greenest energies we usually think of, solar. Now, the main problem in the public mind about nuclear energy is radiation. Like, if I get exposed to radiation, will I develop a second head? No, you will not. But 3 things come to mind when we think of nuclear energy and radiation disasters. We think of Chernobyl, 3 Mile Island, and Fukushima. According to the World Health Organization, Chernobyl killed about 4,000 people. Now, only about 50 or so of these people died within a month or 2 of the accident. Most of the remaining 3,900 or so actually died because the Russian government did not stop milk produced from cows in the region from being sold. And children who drank this milk would get high levels of radioactive iodine that the cows had gotten from the grass they were eating in the Chernobyl region. And this radioactive iodine would get into their thyroid glands. And later in life, this would cause thyroid cancer and other types of cancers for these children, killing thousands of them. Genesis 1:28 tasks us with taking care of the earth. And in Psalm 24:1, it says, "The earth is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof, the world and those who dwell therein." We are tasked with taking care of the earth and stewarding it. We are supposed to take care of what is the Lord's, But fossil fuels are hurting our environment, and we are not taking care of the environment when we use fossil fuels. We are hurting it. And renewable energy cannot take over for fossil fuels and produce our electricity. Nuclear energy has the capacity to produce all the electricity we need and safely. There are these amazing new reactor designs that aren't actually new. Some of them are upwards of half a century old, but due to regulations imposed by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission and the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, they are still not here. These designs are safer, more efficient than the reactors we have today. We have reactor designs that can fit on the back of a semi-trailer, and some of these can actually operate while on the back of the semi-trailer. We have reactor designs that can operate for upwards of 80 years, but these reactor designs are still not out there because they're being stifled by high upfront costs. We need nuclear energy in order to save the lives of millions of people a year, to preserve the environment, and to provide cheap, reliable energy. Thank you.